Finn Balor, arguably one of the most talented Irish wrestlers of all time, came to WWE with a lot of hype, but most of his main event potential simply has not been capitalized while he's with the biggest wrestling company in the world. He's always been considered one of those outlier superstars that a collective of WWE fans feels has so much more left in them than is actually being seen. But for Finn Balor, it was a different story. Let's get into it. This is Sportskeeda Wrestling. I'm Kevin Kellum. What do you think of Finn Balor and his WWE career? Is he bound for more? You think you know all the wrestling stories? There's more you haven't heard yet. Join us on Backstage Pass. There was a point in time when it was almost accepted that Finn Balor was going to main event any big WWE show for years to come. Maybe even before he was in WWE. Before he was Balor, he was Prince Fergal Devitt, who first came to prominence after breaking out of Europe to become an international sensation and as one of the most successful superstars in New Japan Pro Wrestling. There, he was wrestling in front of electrified arena crowds in the Tokyo Dome before he even touched a WWE ring. He would also be one of the men who helped launch the most influential wrestling faction of the millennium, the Bullet Club. Yes, there was a too sweet anticipation for him to break out even bigger on the WWE stage. So where did it all go wrong? Maybe there was injuries, maybe someone's to blame. We gotta point fingers and get unreasonably mad about it. Going back to the time of his main roster call-up in 2016, it's important to know the context of it all. He made a big splash in WWE NXT, and for a few years, he was a central part of making that brand one of the most critically acclaimed and satisfying brands to watch in pro wrestling. One that people felt was better than Raw or SmackDown, depending on who you talk to. And it's hard to blame a lot of people to consider how good he was with NXT and the class of people he was working with, and came into the company in late 2014, got the ball rolling with the black and yellow. So let's see what happens when he goes up to Raw or SmackDown. For almost the entirety of his time in NXT, Finn Balor was the #1 good guy and had one of the longest reigns in the history of the NXT Championship and helped craft the alter ego, The Demon, which, to be fair, was hardly a few years old at that point. It was very fresh, it was very cool, and he was one of the coolest guys in it. Even still, he led NXT into a golden era, and nobody, and we mean no NXT call-up ever, had the same level of anticipation that Finn Balor had. When he lost the NXT Championship to Samoa Joe, it seemed like only a matter of time when he was going to go up to the main roster, finally. Considering that he had achieved what he could and wanted in NXT, nobody wanted to see him kill it more on the big stage than the faithful fans who pushed him there. The WWE Draft was reintroduced after years of dormancy in 2016, and Finn Balor was a first-round pick. The new era of WWE began one night after at the Battleground event, with Raw having no world title at the time as the then WWE champion Dean Ambrose was drafted to SmackDown, and he retained his title against two Raw superstars, his Shield brothers Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins. So, what was the world title situation on Monday at Raw? Enter the new WWE Universal Championship, and Finn Balor, who on his first night on Raw was instantly in the world title mix. He won 2 matches, including a main event against Roman Reigns. Yeah, acknowledge that, as he would advance to the Universal Championship match at SummerSlam. It's not like Roman Reigns had been pinned a lot in the 2020s, but even then, the idea of somebody pinning the Golden Boy on a pedestal was unthinkable. But yeah, Finn Balor put a leash on the big dog. The fighting man, the fighting demon from Bray, County Wicklow, Ireland, had arrived, and the expectations for his main roster run were sky high out of the box, and WWE was trying to deliver on that. They were not messing around. They were pushing this guy straight to the moon. WWE SummerSlam came around, and Finn Balor was going to have the first ever Universal Championship match, and he was going to take on another big match bouting performer in Seth Rollins. During the match, he took a buckle bomb to the outside of the ring, from Seth Rollins, and that led to his shoulder being dislocated. He would still valiantly finish the match, but unfortunately, on the following night of Monday Night Raw, he had to vacate that brand new championship one night after winning it. It was all the way up and all the way down. The worst circumstance you want right after being put in such a big rocket on your back position. It was a huge bummer. It audibly sucked the air out of the building when Finn Balor came out there with his arm in a sling, but there was nothing that could be done. That was simply the circumstances. But there was only hope that WWE would push Balor when he returned. But the entire landscape of the company had changed between SummerSlam 2016 and WrestleMania 33. He was ready before WrestleMania, coming back from the injury, but it seemed to make more sense to keep him as the big Raw after Mania returning superstar. Not a bad position to be in, and it probably was a good idea anyway on paper. To put him in an existing WrestleMania storyline with no build-up would have felt abrupt. He came back to some very fair fanfare, but it was unfortunately a situation where things had really changed. We're talking about a time when WWE thought it was a good idea to turn an enhancement talent in Jinder Mahal into a cheap heat-seeking WWE champion in a few weeks. So it should tell you everything of how the decision-making process was going around this time in WWE. But apart from the overall quality of WWE TV around that time taking a visible dip, the best years of the PG era may have been behind them, that didn't mean the roster wasn't filled with talented people, willing and ready and able to get their push like Finn Balor. Roman Reigns was no longer in the WWE doghouse as the big dog after a wellness violation, and despite not being the tippy-top guy, he was primed near the top of the mid-card, ready to get back into that top-of-the-card position. So that would force other guys like Finn Balor back down. It would have made a lot of sense to turn him maybe into a bad guy like Finn Balor and reach that level, but the never-ending Roman wins saga of turning him into the John Cena of the mid-2010s was in full force once again. Obviously, it wasn't Roman's fault, but it was months that Finn Balor was gone, so any plan to take him to the next level seemingly was out the window because he was on the shelf healing and rehabbing and not on the Mr. McMahon, Vince McMahon radar. Not that it was all bad, but Finn Balor would find himself repeatedly losing major matches. He had a feud with the red-hot, very mystical and supernatural Bray Wyatt, and he would oppose him as a valiant fighting babyface whose momentum would be crushed after he lost the WWE Championship to Randy Orton at WrestleMania 33. So Bray Wyatt was on a revenge path. Unfortunately, Finn Balor was in that path. In the reality, the best thing that happened to Finn Balor in 2017 was his match against Bray Wyatt at TLC being shelved due to Wyatt's illness. The reason for this was WWE asked AJ Styles to fly all the way from South America during a promotional tour to be Wyatt's replacement. That meant we got to see Finn Balor, one of the big stars from New Japan Pro Wrestling fame, take on another big superstar from New Japan Pro Wrestling fame. It was Bullet Club versus Bullet Club for the first time ever. It was the Demon persona, which had been protected for almost all of his time in WWE, being ushered out for this special surprise occasion. Even in NXT, he only lost his last match while being the Demon to Samoa Joe, and on the main roster, he had a perfect score when he put on the face paint. For a match that had no build, it delivered on the excitement. These two went toe-to-toe, Balor getting the win, but these two in an emergency situation delivering for the fans tuning in on the WWE Network and the fans in the arena, delivering a 4.5-star rated Wrestling Observer match that also got an 8.3 from CageMatch.net. He reunited Gallows and Anderson to form the Balor Club. They couldn't call it Bullet Club, and they went on a pursuit of the Intercontinental Championship. Exciting, fun, right? But he didn't get the title. 2018 was another challenging year for Balor. He would win big contenders matches to get a big title shot and then lose the title shot. Balor would get 15 minutes of prime time on the WrestleMania main card in an Intercontinental Triple Threat match with The Miz and Rollins, but he didn't leave New Orleans with the title. He would be in the mix with many big names. He would be in a personal grudge match feud with Baron Corbin, who who was the new hot heel, and he ate a couple of losses in that as well. 2019 started off in a similar note, but the music would change up. Mr. McMahon proclaimed no one believed in him in front of the fans in attendance on Monday Night Raw, right in January with WrestleMania on the horizon. Balor with an opportunity to win another title shot at the Universal Championship, a title he won but never lost, was possible with the Royal Rumble in a few weeks, except he had to face the face of WWE, John Cena, a babyface versus babyface scenario that still came out to be a real test for Balor. He was in the Cena test, and he passed with flying colors, defeating John Cena. Yes, afterwards, Cena, always the idealistic hero, endorsed Balor as someone he believes in. Things were on the up for Finn Balor, but the odds were still not in his favor. All of that momentum heading into the Royal Rumble really wasn't going to matter because he was going to get brutalized in Suplex City by the reigning, defending, wrecking everyone at the time WWE Universal Champion Brock Lesnar, who physically outmatched Balor, but still Balor had the belief of some fans. We knew who the heavy favorite was at that year's Royal Rumble. It was another opportunity to go up, only to be slammed back down. Yeah, it was not the right time to take the belt off Brock, and the timing seemingly was never in Balor's favor to go to the world title level again. This would not stop Balor from being featured in the mid-card for the WWE Intercontinental Championship, a title he would gain, winning back from the almighty Bobby Lashley at the marathon show that was WrestleMania 35. Unfortunately, it was a short match, like too many matches on that card, that had to be reduced by the show simply running so long. This was a demon match that some people really tend to forget, and it was on WrestleMania. Balor's turbulent momentum would continue when he feuded with Andrade, who was just debuting around this time, and would face him on the Super Showdown Premium Live event in the Demon garb. The fact that Finn Balor would lose the Intercontinental Championship to another New Japan veteran, Shinsuke Nakamura, that made sense, but it would be on a pay-per-view pre-show, not on the main card. Kind of telling you everything you need to know. Balor was someone that could deliver great matches, but maybe wasn't the character that WWE was willing to push to the same level as they did before. Balor was still a strong utility player who could deliver fun action with wild characters, like the debut of Bray Wyatt's The Fiend. Yeah, Finn Balor would be the first victim of him. The writing was on the wall. Balor needed a fresh start, and a fresh start was going back to where his WWE journey started, in NXT. It was a completely different NXT from his first time there. By this point, WWE had pushed it into being its own official third brand, but still developmental in the eyes of some. The field was considerably more competitive, and he wasted no time getting into the mix with the likes of wrestling himself, Johnny Wrestling Gargano, Tommaso Ciampa, Bro, Matt Riddle, and more. It was an exciting time for NXT, even with the rise of outside competition from All Elite Wrestling. By this point, Balor had a depthful character. Not hard to see why he wasn't going to use the demon thing this time around. This time, he was considered a more resentful person of those around him. He considered it to be more of a handicap and looked at his NXT run as a way of getting himself back into his own believable merit. He won the WWE NXT Championship and held it for over 200 days. With NXT in a rising position, Balor was once again utilized to help give the brand some big star power. He may not have been the biggest star in WWE, but he was one they could rely on for specific roles like this. In 2021, when he finally lost the NXT Championship to the rising monster Karrion Kross, he was still in his sense of revived purpose. It seemed like the perfect time to reintroduce Finn Balor to the main roster. And that's exactly what happened when the crowds returned for the first time since the pandemic. He was set to face Universal Champion Roman Reigns, but his contract signing got hijacked. John Cena ended up getting the match instead. Once again, momentum's built up, only to be lost. This was a pretty weird way to set up the main event of that year's SummerSlam, with fans coming back, and obviously a lot of fans wanting to see a big mainstream name like John Cena against Roman Reigns. But why did you have to screw Finn Balor along the way to do that? Even still, he stayed in the mix with Roman Reigns, who was truly coming into his own as the tribal chief. with the WWE Universal Championship, and it made some sense to give him a revived sense of purpose chasing the title, reviving the Demon once more, who is seen as unbeatable in these types of situations, at least for the most part. And we're guessing that many people thought the Demon King could be the one to finally outmatch Roman Reigns in his devious ways with the bloodline. But that didn't end up happening. I mean, the top rope buckle fell apart, there were shenanigans, and in a dusty finish, Roman Reigns was able to squeeze his way out with the Universal title. It looked like it was a different decade, but it was the same story for Finn Balor. He reached the finals of the King of the Ring tournament, only to lose to Xavier Woods. He managed to win another big title in the United States Championship. It was exciting, but his reign was relatively short-lived. It only really served the purpose of building up Damian Priest's heel turn. Joining the Judgment Day, though, was a breath of fresh air for Finn Balor, who up to that point, for the most part, was seen as a babyface hero. Now he was joining a heelish new group with some new objectives, and one that was separate, far away from the bloodline on a different show. It solidified Finn Balor as a bad guy on the main roster for the real first time. When things started for the JD as a different group, they were the go-to guys with their experience, their ability to deliver on TV time, and maximize their minutes. On Monday Night Raw, Judgment Day was the show, and Finn Balor was a big part of that. The group with Priest, Dominic Mysterio, and Rhea Ripley had Balor as the veteran, who had more experience than all of them put together. So it wasn't surprising that he would be the one to take on the man who started the Judgment Day and now was seeking revenge against the group on a road to WrestleMania. The returning and revengeful rated R superstar Edge. The very personal feud with Edge versus Balor in the Judgment Day had wild cliff-dangling moments, but it would have bittersweetness at the end for Balor. It was carefully crafted in such a way that it would set up to WrestleMania between Balor and Edge. But the way things played out were quite interesting. For one, when Finn Balor and Rhea Ripley faced Edge and Beth Phoenix at the Elimination Chamber match before WrestleMania, the decision was to have the veterans win, which was questionable in the build and road to WrestleMania. But then people went like, oh yeah, that's only because Finn Balor is going to win in LA at WrestleMania 39, right? Inside Hell in a Cell? Mind you, it was well after the change of regime of WWE's creative team, but it looks like Finn Balor was in the crossfire, maybe backstage, the company was being bought out. A lot of things are moving wrong. It's a big Hell in a Cell match, and that's Edge's playground, and it's WrestleMania, and it's the biggest moment for him since I don't know when. But instead, Edge picked up the win in a bloody, brutal Hell in a Cell match that is pretty underrated and maybe one of the biggest matches in Balor's career, but another big match that he lost. It was another major moment that could have taken him to the main event level. But it just wasn't the case. It wasn't the time. Edge was still on his feel-good comeback tour, and the setback of starting the Judgment Day meant that his character had to kind of be refitted, and you had to give people another good feel-good match at WrestleMania. So have Edge win. In the meanwhile, Damian Priest and particularly Rhea Ripley stepped up in being more highlighted members of Judgment Day. And in a way, Balor, even with the experience, was sort of a supporting player. Finn Balor competed for the World Heavyweight Championship in back-to-back premium live events, but in hindsight, it was probably not that bad of a thing that he lost to Seth Rollins. For one, Seth Rollins was on a hot streak of his own as the World Heavyweight Champion, a new title that he was establishing, and having Balor dethrone him would have ruined all of that. Once again, the circumstances were not in Balor's favor, but it basically turned Balor into a guy who never really got to win the big one. He ended up winning the tag team titles with Priest, and after that, it seemed like his opportunity to become a main event single star may have passed him by. This isn't to take anything away from him. You're still in a very depthful roster of WWE during a renaissance period, but you want to be the guy, right? In 2024, Damian Priest became even bigger than Balor in the eyes of some, and WWE, focusing on a more youthful movement, went with Priest inadvertently costing him the World Championship multiple times in an interesting story. Story trumps wins and losses, everybody, and Balor once again suffered the losses. He decided to remove Damian Priest from the Black and Purple Judgment Day and was directly responsible for Priest losing his World Championship to Gunther at SummerSlam. Yeah, revenge is a bitch Damien. When it came time for the two to finally clash in this grudge match of two former faction members, two former tag team partners, Damian Priest, who beat the numbers game, overcame Finn Balor. And he was having more fan support at the time anyway. We're not necessarily arguing against the decision as a bad one, but it's a continuing trend of Balor being the bridesmaid, not the bride. Yes, it's not like he's in a bad position per se, but it's clear that there could have been so much more done with him. Yeah, he's served in great utility roles. We keep bringing that up. WWE loves a guy they know they can rely on to play a part and deliver the notes that need to be played. Balor does that. But when does he get his solo? When does he get to do his thing? All said and done, Finn Balor probably isn't a very unhappy man. He's probably a very well-paid one. He did sign another deal with WWE. Yeah, he's going to be with them for a couple more years. And there are no details on how much he makes or what his guaranteed is, because considering his status as a Tier 1 or at the lowest a Tier 2 WWE guy, you can bet he's making a minimum of upper six figures or more. Perhaps he's just happy being the guy he is. Multiple decades into his career, he has crafted a name that people respect, that fans know when the bell rings for a Finn Balor match, they're gonna get a hell of a match. It's what anyone is able to achieve regardless of whether you're a wrestler at the lowest level, an engineer, a plumber, whatever you want to do in life, you want to be regarded as one of the best to do it. Win or lose, Finn Balor is one of the best to do it. We're waiting to see him get what he deserves. That main event, top level run. There's more left in the tank, as Mark Henry would say when people thought he was done. Yeah, there's more in the tank for Finn Balor, and maybe even a greater depth of evil for the demon once more. Well, you watched this entire video? You haven't hit the like yet? Yeah, what do you want to see happen with Finn Balor? Hit the like button, jump into the comments, and let us know. Do you think Finn Balor has a chance of still being the main event guy that many people feel he can become? Let us know what you think in the comments below.